All right, thanks everybody for being at the Sony Creative Software booth. My name is Gary Rebholtz, as previously mentioned. And in the next half hour, I'm going to show you a brand new product that we've just introduced at the show today. We're offering a technology preview of a new product called Spectral Layers. You can still hear me? Okay. And what Spectral Layers is all about is editing audio. So I want to talk just a second before we get started with the discussion of Spectral Layers, just in general about audio, so that we have some basis of understanding of what we're about to do here. So you probably all know that audio is just waves in the air. When you hear a sound, it's just sound waves coming to you. And when digital audio was first developed, it for the first time gave us a way not only to work with audio, but to visualize it. And so we started visualizing and working with audio with a waveform editor. One of the absolutely best waveform editors anywhere is our own SoundForge. And SoundForge has been a great tool, indispensable for a lot of different uses. But there are some things that waveform editing doesn't really do very well. And that's what Spectral Layers has been developed to solve. But let's take a look at waveform editing just for a second. You can see that I've got on the screen here, I've got a simple wave file open in SoundForge. And so what you see is across the bottom, you've got time, and across the vertical axis, you've got amplitude or volume. And the waveform just dips up and down, and with a sine wave, it's just a very uniform sound and a uniform wave. And when I play that wave, it just sounds like a tone, like that. Now that's a very simplistic wave. A more complex wave would be a noise wave. Let me play this noise for you. It's just a little bit of white noise. It sounds like this. It sounds like a hiss. And if I zoom in on that, you'll see that the waveform for the noise is far more chaotic, right? It's just a random sampling of waveform just all over the place. Now, in the real world, audio is usually not just noise, and it's usually not just waveforms. It's a mixture of those things. So what happens when I mix the sine wave with the noise? I get something that looks like this. Okay? You can sort of see the shape of the sine wave still going up and down, but you also see the noise just messing everything up. So the challenge with digital audio in this case is, if I play this, you'll hear the tone, then you'll hear the noise and the tone. Okay? With waveform editing, we can do a lot of things. So for instance, in this file, let me get a different file here. In this file, if I play through this, you'll hear a click. Did you hear that? Turn it up a little bit. Okay, so waveform editing is great because I can come in and I can zoom in on that waveform and I can see very clearly the problem I have with this waveform. And I can use my tools to maybe do some manual correction, and I'm just doing this very sloppily. So I've kind of corrected that waveform, right? Well, if life was as simple as a sine wave, this would be great, but it's not that simple, is it? What waveform editing can't do, and I usually use kind of a corny analogy here, think of making batter for a birthday cake. If you take 3 eggs and a bunch of flour and you put them in a bowl and you mix them all up, then somebody comes along and says to you, oh no, you only need 2 eggs, you got to take one of those eggs back out of there, you're out of luck, right? Well, it's the same with audio. With waveform editing, if we mix those 2 files together so it sounds like this, right? We've got the noise and the frequency. If somebody says take that frequency out of there, that tone out of there, well, I can't get to it, right? Because the noise is messing me all up. So we needed a different way to look and work with audio, and that's what Spectral Layers is all about. So let me go ahead and open that same file in Spectral Layers, and then let's start seeing what we can do here. So I'm going to open the same 2 frequencies with white noise in Spectral Layers, and in Spectral Layers it looks like this. So remember, in SoundForge, in a waveform editor, we were seeing time and amplitude. But in a spectral editor, we're seeing time and frequency. So you don't have to be an expert at this product to maybe tell me what the noise portion of the file is. It just looks like this snowstorm here. It's just a bunch of random noise, random stuff. And just as easy to see is the tone at that one frequency that's lighting up like a neon sign. Okay, well, it's cool that we can see it, but what's even cooler is that we can now start working with it. Now that we have the noise visually separated from the frequency, from the tone, we can start doing some interesting stuff. So let me add a new layer to my project here. If you're familiar with Photoshops, it's a very similar concept to Photoshop layers, only we're working with audio and not graphics, right? So what I'm going to do, now that I have a new layer, I'm going to name this low sine. If I play this file, sounds just the same as it did in SoundForge, right? What I can do now that I have a new layer is I can extract different types of, different pieces from the base layer. So what I want to do is I'm going to use a tool called the extract frequency tool. And I'm just going to change my parameters slightly here, just to give me a little bit bigger swath. And then I'm going to point at the tone. Notice when I point at the tone, it turns blue. And I can preview it. Yeah, that's the tone, right? Well, big deal. It's out here in the noise where there's no noise, so you'd expect to hear just the tone. Well, the big deal is if I come over where the noise is and preview this, I'm still hearing just the tone. Now, what does that buy me? Well, what that buys me is I can click on that tone, and you notice it turning yellow as I click on it. Now that it's yellow, it indicates that I have extracted it to this layer. So it exists in the original mixed layer. The tone also exists on the top layer. Now to understand what's going to happen next, you need to understand a little bit about something called phase cancellation. You guys know what phase cancellation is? Basically, a basic explanation is if you take one waveform and put another waveform that's exactly equal and opposite and play them together, they cancel each other out and you don't hear anything. In the real world, it's never quite that pretty, right? Because noise comes from everywhere. But in the computer, it's perfect mathematics. So all I need to do is put a negative sign in front of all the numbers, or however they do it in the computer, and I can perfectly cancel the phase of that top track. And to do that, all I need to do is click this phase inversion button. So now I've inverted the phase, and so the theory is that the tone on the top, which is in an opposite phase of the tone on the bottom, they're just going to cancel each other out. When I click away so that you're seeing the composite, watch what happens here. Tone is gone. Now when I play this project, you hear nothing but noise. Now I could do the same thing with a little bit higher tone if I wanted to, right? Okay, so that's pretty cool, right? But it's pretty theoretical. So what happens in the real world? Well, let's take a look at a real world project and see what we can do. Before I open it up in Spectral Layers, I'm going to open a file and play it in my media player for you so that you can hear what we're working with here. This is just a snippet from an old public service announcement about air raids, duck and cover kind of thing, probably produced in 1950-ish, right? So it's about 60 years old now. Let me turn this up a little bit, and I'll play this for you. I'll play it once, and then we'll talk about it, and I'll play it again so you can key in on a couple of things that we're going to work with. Can you hear it?
Which began in such an ordinary way, was no ordinary day. At 10:35, the banshee wail of the siren echoes the warning, and the city prepares for survival.
Okay, so it's an old file. It's a mixed file, right? The audio is all mixed together, and it has some problems. Now I'll play it again. When I play it again, listen, did you hear the real high-pitched whine in that file? There's some sort of machine noise going on, like the camera or whatever recorded that. was causing a high-pitched whine. So that's problem number one. We're going to take care of that. Problem number two is there's some noise in there, some tape hiss from the old tape. And problem number three is a little more complicated. You heard the air raid siren go off, and then if you were listening to what the narrator was saying, you might have noticed that the air raid siren goes off, and then maybe 3 seconds later he says, at 10:30 the air raid siren goes off. Well, here I am 60 years later remixing this file for a project that I'm working on, and I can't figure out why the audio engineer mixed it so that the air raid siren didn't start when he said the air raid siren starts, right? So I want to fix that problem. So I'll play it one more time and let you key in on those three problems. Those are what we're going to fix here.
And so this day called X, which began in such an ordinary way, is no ordinary day. At 10:35, the banshee wail of the siren echoes the warning, and the city prepares for survival.
All right, so I think it'd be much cooler if that air raid siren started when he said it starts. So let's go get that same file, that MP4 file, and open it in Spectral layers, and here's what it looks like. Let me zoom in on it a little bit and move it up so you can see it. And zoom out just a little bit. Now I'm gonna increase the brightness a bit so you can get a little bit better sense of what we're looking at here. All right, I bet you can tell me what that is. Remember that high-pitched whine we were hearing? That's what that is. What's all this stuff that looks like a snowstorm over here? That's noise, right? And right in here, you can see the air raid siren. So let's go ahead and start working with this file a little bit. So the first thing I want to do is get rid of that high-pitched whine at the top. Remember how we did that? Just exactly the same technique I used to extract that sine wave. I'm going to add a new layer. I'll call it high frequency, just so I remember what it is. And then get that same tool, the frequency extract tool. I can point at it, I can preview it. Can you hear it? Probably can't hear it in this room. Let me turn this up just a second. Hear it? Yeah. So it's there. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to extract it. So all I'm doing is taking different sections of it and clicking on it. All right, and does anybody remember what we did once we had it extracted to this layer, which I do now have it extracted to that top layer? If I mute the view of the bottom layer, that's what we just extracted, just that one frequency. Does anybody remember what we did to get rid of it? Yeah, we flipped the phase, we inverted the phase. So let's invert the phase. Let's click away so you're seeing the composite and gone, all right? So when I play it, that frequency is gone. Is that cool? That's pretty cool. All right, it gets better. Notice that we have the air raid siren down here. Let me dim this down a little bit so it stands out just a bit. I can use the same tool to point to the air raid siren, and that's what it sounds like. But unlike a sine wave or that piece of machine noise, real world noise is more complicated, right? So a noise like this air raid siren has what's called a fundamental frequency. It's kind of the base of what it sounds like. But it also has a series of overtones called harmonic frequencies. So when I'm speaking to you, you hear my voice, which is a mixture of my fundamental frequency and all the harmonics coming to your ear. Well, if you look at this file, you can see all the harmonic frequencies, can you see those? Of that air raid siren. So in order to really effectively extract that air raid siren, we have to get not only the fundamental frequency, but all of the harmonic frequencies. And I could use this same tool to get the fundamental, then go get the first harmonic, and then the second, and so forth. But we've got another tool that makes my job even easier. I'm adding a new layer, I'll call it siren. I've got a tool called the extract harmonics tool. Watch what happens when I point to the fundamental frequency with this tool. I point to it and they all light up. Because harmonics is strictly mathematical. I don't know how much you know about it, but it's totally math. So once I zero in on the fundamental frequency, the computer just knows how to do the math to figure out the other frequencies. Now what if I can't get a hold of the fundamental frequency? Maybe the fundamental frequency is so mixed up with other stuff that I can't latch onto it. Well, I can change my target frequency up here, I could say, well, I want to use the second harmonic and use that to sample as the basis of my math, and it just works. All right, let's go back to the first harmonic, and let's start extracting this. So as I click through this, I'm extracting all the harmonics along with the fundamental. Now, when we get to the end of the file here, something interesting happens, and we find out that the siren is actually two tones playing in unison until the very end, when one tone keeps going and the other one falls down. Well, if we bring our tool over here, you can see that it's actually following the knee of that frequency that's going down. If I preview it, you'll hear it. Okay? Should I make that a little louder, or did you hear that well enough? A little louder? All right, so I'm going to extract that piece, and then here's the other piece. Whoops. Right? So that's the piece that goes straight. So I've now extracted both of those. So the software is smart enough to make some decisions about what it thinks you're trying to capture. As I go through this area right here, all this stuff that you see here, like rising like smoke, those are the frequencies of the man's voice. Well, the siren obviously plays through where the voice is, and this is where the magic really happens. If I come through and preview this, even though the man is speaking here, I can grab hold of just that siren and extract it. Now, I'll be a little sloppy here, and I'll get some stuff that doesn't belong, and then we'll come back and fix it later. I'll just go through it real quickly. You can see that I'm getting some things in here that don't belong to the siren frequency. I could use the tools up across the top to make my target more precise, and I can change my resolution of my view, if that helps, to just see things a little more finely. So there are a lot of different things I can do to get a more exact selection of my siren, but in this case I'm just doing it kind of sloppy because I want to show you some other tools as well. And notice what happens here when the pitch of the siren dips down. We're still getting it, but it's still just mathematics, so even though the curve of the harmonics is different, it still works out, and we're still getting those as well. Right, so we got the pitch up of the siren. All right, so we've now extracted that to that top layer. If I mute the other two layers, you can see what I've extracted to that layer. We can see that I was real sloppy in through here. I didn't do a very good job. So let me just clean that up a little bit. I'll use my selection tool just to come in and select some stuff and delete it. I don't want those frequencies in there, so I'll just get them out. All right, so that's pretty cool. What if something's happening over here and I can't get it with my selection tool? I've also got an erase tool that I can just come in and just take little chunks of it out. Let's get rid of the selection and then get the erase tool. And I can just erase little pieces like that. So I can really spend the time to really get what I need to get out of this. All right, let's bring our other layers back into the view. Once again, to remove that siren from that location, what do? Invert the phase, right? So let's invert it, click away, and look at that. I bet just by looking at it, you can see what you're going to hear in a moment, right?
And so this day, caller, which began in such an ordinary way, is no ordinary day.
No siren.
10:35, the banshee wail of the sun.
Pretty cool, right? All right, watch this. It gets better. So I'm going to duplicate that siren track. I now have a duplicate of the siren. I don't want that inverted, so I'm going to put it back into positive phase. Because we didn't want to really just remove the siren. We wanted to move it to over here where he says the siren starts, right? So let me go ahead and copy what's on that layer. Or I should say cut it. When it turns blue, it indicates it's now on my clipboard. I'm going to move my clipboard to the left, or to the right, to right about there. Then I'm going to paste it down. And Check this out.
And so this day, Codex, which began in such an ordinary way, is no ordinary day. At 10:35, the Banshee wail of the siren echoes the warning. And the city
Magic, right? Now you guys get the magic. This is awesome. To be able to do something like this to a file that was mixed 50, 60 years ago, incredible. Now, everything I've done so far has been all about noise cancellation. We've been taking stuff out. But you don't have to work that way. What if I want that siren to be louder? I can just turn it up. And so now when we play through it,
Banshee wail of the siren echoes the warning. And the city.
right, it's twice as loud. So, in other words, once I've extracted all this stuff to different layers, I can totally remix this file. If I wanted to go and isolate the frequencies of his voice, I could pull that out, I could remix that, I could add VST effects to it to add some echo or EQ or whatever it is I want to do to it. Think about this in the case of a mastering engineer, somebody who receives a mixed file from a band and the mix just isn't good, right? The bass is too low or the guitars aren't loud enough or whatever. As a mastering engineer, I could go in and sample those bass frequencies, extract them to a bass layer, and totally remix that file. That's a cool tool. Another thing you could do with it, right? What if you were you're recording a beautiful quiet sonata by the orchestra, right? And somebody's got a cold, and it always happens, every half minute they cough. Well, we could go through and take out every one of those coughs and have a pristine recording when we're done. So that's pretty cool. The last thing we wanted to do was we wanted to get rid of the noise. So let's hide the siren layer for a moment. I'll create a new track, a new layer, that's my noise layer. I'm just going to make a little selection of this area of noise right here and get another extraction tool called the noise extraction tool. Now what I do is I register the noise, and this is just going to register the noise in that little area that I created. Now I'm doing this manually. You've seen that thing flick back and forth. I'm just doing that with my mouse. As I said, this is a beta version of the software and a technology preview. We'll most likely have a much cleaner way of grabbing that noise in the future, but you can see that I've now registered that noise, and it sounds like this. Can you hear it? Sounds like noise. Take my word for it. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to up the frequency range just a little bit, just to give me a little bit. Hold on here. Okay. Now when I come down to my file, all I need to do is to draw through it, and look what's happening. Can you see that? See what's turning blue? What's turning blue is the noise I registered. What's not turning blue, what's remaining green, is remaining untouched. Right? So I've just extracted the noise to that top layer, and it sounds like this. Can you hear it? Okay. So if I do what to get rid of it? I invert the phase, click away, and obviously I didn't do a perfect job of it on demo here, but look at here. Totally noise-free, right? Let me bring the siren back into the picture and play this thing from the beginning, and here's our final product. Let me try it again. I'll turn it up a bit.
And so this day, Codex, which began in such an ordinary way, is no ordinary day. At 10:35, the Banshee wail of the siren echoes the warning, and the city prepares for survival.
What do you think? Is that awesome? That's Spectral Layers, guys. We're going to have this product ready late summer, early fall, and it's going to be very attractively priced, and you guys maybe can think of a thing or two to do with a tool like this. It's a lot of fun. I appreciate you being here for our demo, and hang around. If you have any more questions about Spectral Layers or any of our other software, we've got people over here. I'll be hanging around. Be happy to talk to you. Thanks, everybody.